Welcome to Fandom Power.
Hey guys, welcome back to Order 66. I'm your host, Wes, and today, joining me in studio, producer extraordinaire Andrew Dawe.
Hello.
And out in Halifax, our regular co-host and super friend of the show, Hank McClocklin.
Dun, da, da, da.
Welcome back, gentlemen. So it's week 3, even though we had a huge hiatus.
Part 3.
Yes, part 3 of our review series. This time it's season 7, episode 11, because I'm much more prepared this week. It's called Shattered. It has a runtime of 26 minutes. This one, as the entire season, is written by Dave Filoni, and it's directed by Saul Ruiz. Now, Saul Ruiz, his name has come up before. We didn't really dive in sort of on his stuff, but just a couple of notes on him. He's directed multiple episodes of Clone Wars, Rebels, Star Wars Resistance, and oddly enough, or interestingly enough, he was a cinematic animator on the Force Unleashed video game.
Oh, very cool. He goes way back.
So no stranger to cinematic action in the Star Wars universe, and that certainly is going to shine through on this episode.
I feel like we need to touch on the title just for a brief second.
Yeah,
what
Shattered.
Shattered actually means here. And like some of the titles of the Mandalorian episodes, this one has got so many nuanced meanings. Everything that Ahsoka believes in is shattered. Everything that Rex believes in is shattered. Everything that Anakin believes in is shattered.
Yeah.
I think
the galaxy at large is shattered.
It's shattered.
Yeah.
And I think the only characters that aren't, and I can't say gravely affected because they definitely are, but the characters that are on the inside, like the characters like certainly Palpatine and Maul are the characters that are immune to the shards of the shatter, if you will.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It does to me.
It's an excellent title.
So something I noticed, not related to the title, but usually in these episodes I'll do the official synopsis. But today on this one, when I was doing my research, I was flipping back and forth between the Disney Plus streaming app, and I was kind of flipping back and forth to the Wikipedia to get sort of the some finer details that I wanted to make sure we touched on. And I discovered something that I was not aware of previously. Season 7, it debuted when? Earlier 2020?
I believe.
I don't remember when it started. So here's the thing. There's the synopsis on Disney Plus, and it's different from the official synopsis on the Wikipedia.
Huh.
So I'm going to read them both. I mean, they both say essentially the same thing, but just as a point of interest, I thought that's kind of neat. So the official one from the Wikipedia, it says, Maul is captured and the siege of Mandalore is won, but evil lurks elsewhere and the galaxy will never be the same. Meanwhile, the Disney Plus episode description says, while Ahsoka returns Maul to the Jedi on Coruscant, Order 66 is declared. It's kind of flavory different, I guess.
They sort of like illustrate different parts.
They do. They really they punch on different levels.
There's something interesting there about the Siege of Mandalore line, because it's not really cut and dry that they won that. Like they routed them in that moment.
Yeah.
We sort of get the idea from the Mandalorian that siege went on for decades. Like
this episode for me, and I was going into it, I was thinking about that because of sort of what's laid out for us in later episodes of Rebels and now The Mandalorian, where Bo-Katan has been presumably deposed and is now still fighting for control of her world. We know something bad has happened. We haven't really sort of hit on the head what. We know that Gar Saxon is going to be elevated to a governorship at some point. Mm-hmm. But this episode, watching it, I was left with When they take Maul off world, I was left with the impression that that's what was going to happen. She was going to just sort of slide into the leadership role. You see the clones kind of attending all of the wounded civilians, and it kind of lends itself to what she said in the last episode, that the people will not tolerate a prolonged siege, and neither will I. Well, it wasn't very prolonged. It was like 24 hours later, like short period of time, and it's over.
Perhaps it's multiple sieges of Mandalore, because this doesn't seem to be the one that Moff Gideon was in charge of, certainly.
No, exactly.
Right? Or even the event with Sabine's weapon from Rebels.
And that could be why Disney rewrote that synopsis.
That's entirely possible, yeah.
Because if this wasn't the siege, this was just a siege.
A siege, yeah.
And so that leads me into a question sort of organically, and I don't know if it's well placed in the narrative of this episode, but my question is, with Maul in shackles and in the custody of the Jedi Order ostensibly,
right?
Where is the Darksaber at this point? And does Bo-Katan have it?
Wow.
I don't know where the Darksaber is. And it's actually a huge, they've elevated it to this status within the lore that it's a huge plot point now to know at this moment where that Darksaber is. Because how does that not end up in Palpatine's possession?
Well, he clearly doesn't have it on him when they put him in the prison cell.
No.
And if you equate him to a dragon, he's got a
horde somewhere
in the tunnels,
but
underneath Mandalore.
And it's it's that simple in Rebels when it comes out, because it's like, we found it in his stuff.
That's true.
That's
a
found
good
it
point.
in his
that line
stuff?
is a good point, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, we found it among his belongings. That's a good point.
But it doesn't change the fact that where did it go?
Yeah, it's like it was almost a minor plot point that they've just, because we found it as fans, that's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah,
they've elevated it to this.
Oh boy,
mighty Excalibur style weapon.
Wow, there's a whole lot to dig in on that. I wish I had the answers for you.
Well, really, it's just sitting on his nightstand right now.
That's right, eh? Like some point, someone's gonna come along and who was in this room? Oh shit!
And I don't know if you had a quick check at that comic I sent you from that fan.
I started into it, but then I got distracted because I was doing some other business related stuff.
It's very long. He did 7. I mean, I'm like, wow, congratulations. Yeah. He did 7 issues, but there is stuff from Colin Trevorrow's. That is Colin Trevorrow's script.
Yeah.
And there's a part where Rey fights one of the Knights of Ren, and that Knight of Ren, he's named, I can't recall his name, but he wields the Darksaber in that duel.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So
that's super cool.
Yeah, super cool. So I'm going to read it, actually get the story, the plot points, because I kind of just glanced over it. But so they've,
I read the first, I think I read the first 3 pages, and I kind of went, I like this. I want to come back to it.
I got through the first issue. But...
Did you? Yeah.
I did 6 or 7 last night.
Oh, wow.
But it's fairly good. I quite enjoy it. But there's really neat things in there like that. Just the Darksaber thing really knocked my socks off.
So here's the thing. Before we get going with the episode, let's agree that between now and the next episode of our show, we go back and see what's there in the animation to give us any clues as to where it might be right now.
That'd be great, actually. Yeah, do a little sleuthing.
Yeah, maybe we can come back to that next week. And if not, maybe maybe there's some literature out there that we've missed. Who knows? It's true. I did do a lot of research on the Darksaber when it first popped up. The second it popped up in The Mandalorian, I was like, and I started trying to trace it back. And that's where we got that it's ancestral, almost father to son thing before it became a combat thing. Right. But yeah, there's a gray area, and I don't know if I hardly think that it got by the writers. Yeah. And so, but perhaps not being the greatest, it might even undermine the plot here, which is why we discussed that he didn't use it in the duel with Ahsoka. No, of course not. And so just having, we found it in his things is probably sufficient. We just want more. Just like finding the Skywalker saber in a chest at the bottom of Maz Kanata's castle.
With no explanation.
Yes. All right, so let's get on with the episode then.
Do it.
So our opening shot presumably takes place in the morning hours of the same day that Maul is captured, as we see the LAAT come in for a landing. And there's a shot of some 332nd clones and Mandalorian loyalists rounding up sort of the remaining Mandalorian troops. We have Bo-Katan take a pass as she's walking down the sort of the street, passes Gar Saxon, who like sneers kind of at her.
Mhm.
So once the gunship kind of lands and the doors open and you see it's Ahsoka and Maul still tied up in the cables that we saw in the previous episode. Which that brings me to my first point, just to want to talk about Gar Saxon for a second, right? Here's that thing, right? Like the look. I know we talked last week about the animation can sometimes be limiting in terms of like expression. Whereas this episode, I found it to be completely the opposite, and they were like very, very expressive and very emotive. And certainly the look that Gar Saxon gives Bo on the way by, to me, I kind of thought of it as like pure revulsion. You know, he's really, really pissed.
They super peaked with their animation in this season for sure. And that's one of my favorite things about it. Story and everything else that's wonderful about it aside, is that every season had this like quantum leap.
Yeah, in terms of quality, yeah.
And was really hoping Resistance might be the love child of something like that.
Different target audience, though.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So, talking about Gar Saxon for a minute, we already just touched on earlier that we know he's going to be elevated to a governor's position within the Empire. And again, I guess my question is, when did that happen? Because as I'm sort of doing my research, and I wanted to make sure that I understood, because I knew that he plays later. We see him in Rebels, and it's like, oh yeah, you're the governor of Mandalore. But his official description, his canonical description, describes him as an Emperor's hand. Did you guys know that?
I did not.
Neither did I.
Did not know that.
So, for anybody who's not familiar with the Emperor's hands were made sort of famous in the legends. They were sort of these secret agents that reported directly to the Emperor that kind of were his private assassination corps. Essentially, that's what they were. And the canonical description doesn't really divert from that.
Where's that canon? Is that on what?
That's on the Wikipedia now. I mean, it is Wikipedia, so I mean, you can take it with a big grain of, crate sea salt, but...
Yeah, nicely done. You and I can both edit that website. I mean,
I
is
know.
fact checked, but that's very interesting. I'm going to check that out.
Yeah, Emperor's Hand, Gar Saxon.
Because if that just the phrase even rears its head,
doesn't it?
In anything, in a visual medium, if we see it on an episode of The Mandalorian or in the Ahsoka Tano, that phrase pops up. We're going to get Mara Jade.
Presumably, I would think so. I mean, if there is a fan favorite,
that's the natural conclusion to that role, if you will.
If you're going to introduce the Emperor's hands, who better to do it than through the Mara Jade character, who is like uber famous in Legends?
And I thought maybe that's what the Inquisitors were, filling that role during Rebels and then in some of the like the Fallen Order video game. But then I remembered like that the Inquisitores from the D6 game.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's a hybrid of that, but just knowing that that's a canon possibility really, really opens up some avenues to bring some Legends characters in that we would want,
It says to me that somebody had to put some forethought into that character before you would slap that title on them, because, like you say, Emperor's Hand carries a connotation and a status that goes with it that's like, like it's Boba Fett level. What?
Yes. Yeah, no, that's that's a big one.
Yeah, so I'm really curious to know if there's more on that. Maybe that's another research point for all of us. Maybe we can come back to next week.
So you can see if he's got control of Mandalore, Gar Saxon at the time of the Imperial sort of the reckoning or where they're consolidating
the
their
new
power.
order.
Right. And if he's got control of Mandalore, ostensibly he has control of all the neutral systems as well. Perhaps that's where the Darksaber is at this point.
Does the coalition of independence? Sorry, I guess that's not the right word. Does the independent system thing survive the war? Like, do they maintain that alliance with Mandalore?
They don't really talk about the third faction at all,
No.
for in the context that it exists.
Yeah.
But I would assume that, I mean, sort of much the way World War II planned out, like that the neutral countries essentially stayed neutral.
I guess what I'm saying is, to me, the whole thing was framed under the leadership of Satine and her sort of level-headed, peaceable outlook.
Yes.
With that being gone, does that, sort of suggest a dissolution of that alliance, that everybody, all those independent worlds are trying to maintain their independence, but they're not doing it as a coalition anymore?
Well, certainly any of the worlds that would rebel openly would be crushed, and that's why we started going to the dark.
I guess so, yeah.
But thinking now, like if he is in control of a coalition of worlds that are under sort of Mandalore's protection, and if that is a viable faction, if you will, or like a challenge, to the throne of the Empire, if you will, then could Gar Saxon not parlay those worlds and his world into a position within the Emperor's cabinet, like a
it's entirely
like
possible,
a governor or a hand, or even you know what I mean, because he's super crafty politically.
So this is something that the Legends kind of dug into, particularly going back to the D6 role playing game, where they did an entire sector, 2 sectors actually. So, and this actually, there's precedence here, right? Because in the some of the earliest novels, like pre EU, pre Timothy Zahn, like going back to the original Han Solo trilogy.
Yep.
At Star's End, The Lost Legacy, and Han Solo's Revenge.
Smuggler's Run.
Those books took place in the corporate sector. And so when it came time to flesh out the corporate sector for the role-playing game, they kind of framed it in the sense that the corporate sector was allowed to maintain their neutrality and their self-governance because they paid a lot of money to the Imperial war machine.
Yeah, which falls right in line with sort of the DJ's speech to Finn from The Last Jedi.
Doesn't it, though?
Yeah.
On Canto Bight, or when they're leaving Canto Bight.
It's like, like there is a bigger perspective, and a sort of, there's light side, dark side, good guy, bad guy. Everybody knows that, but there's this other perspective where money even drives a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah. And then they did the same thing again when they introduced another sector of space called the Tapani sector.
That's right.
So, they had this level of self-governance. They had their own sort of policing and whatnot. But it all kind of hinged on that could come crumbling down at any second if they, did not essentially pay up.
And, other things like Hut Space, which isn't necessarily canon either, but although Nar Shaddaa and a few of the other planets inside it have
Nal Hutta, Nar Shaddaa.
Right. But Hut Space has always been like its own sector as well. It's the Empire has to deal with them.
Yeah.
We never see this army that the Hutts have.
No.
That the crime empires have.
No, we don't really.
But they're still like, Darth Vader can phone up Boba Fett and request a guy,
Right.
Right. So there's this, either it's an uneasy alliance or that they just allow that to happen because it makes them money somehow.
Well, let's bring it around full circle and tie it all together. The Beskar ingots in the Mandalorian are stamped with the Imperial signet. So is that Mandalore's payment for neutrality?
Their contribution to
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for me, don't cancel me. But that always don't cancel me. But that reminded me of the way that the Nazis stole gold and then stamped it with their own.
Oh yeah, I guess so, eh?
Right? Please don't cancel me.
No, there's no canceling here. There might be accountability.
No, not you guys. I just
don't turn us off.
But that's what that I would, like stolen loot and we branded your cattle, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But Gar Saxon is underhanded as F, and at the same time, he wants to control Mandalore and wants to, it's all self-serving. Like that all is self-serving to him. That puts him in power. That puts him in this central role. It's not like for the betterment of his people. It's just so that he can be at the top of the food chain, or as top as he can get. So yeah, handing over oodles and oodles and oodles of that could be at the same time. But
keeps him
now thinking about it,
keeps him on the top of the food chain in his world. Yeah.
And then I was it just occurred to me now that rather than the Siege of Mandalore in The Mandalorian, don't we refer to it as the Purge? Just struck me now that might be a different term. And again, Purge is used in the Jedi.
Yeah, that's how I always contextualize Purge as in the Jedi Purge.
But I think
there may be a reference for Purge in terms of like in relation
Gideon
to Mandalore.
So.
Well, they do say there's the incident that happens.
Yeah, that he does this ambiguous thing, whatever it is.
Tears.
Yeah. Night of a Thousand Tears.
Night of a Thousand Tears.
I think it's called. Yeah. Okay.
And if you pair that up with Rogue One and them testing out lasers,
well,
maybe Gar Saxon gets away at some point post Clone Wars, and then strikes up a deal, says, come in, make your example. I will be your in-place leader, and carry on.
That's entirely possible too. I still think that Death Star thing holds some weight.
Doesn't it?
Single reactor ignition, my friends. We can glass a city.
Yeah, and just testing along the way.
Yeah, exactly.
When we see parts of that planet in Rebels, it's not like the planet we saw in Clone Wars.
No, it isn't. Okay, well, going back to the episode. Overlooking a lower level, Bo-Katan and Ahsoka watch as the clones and her loyalists tend to the injured civilians. And the two share a brief moment where Bo actually credits Ahsoka for doing what others could not in capturing Maul. I thought this was a nice little development piece for Bo here, because she kind of goes off about how she wishes she was good at something other than war. And Ahsoka's pretty receptive to that and kind of shoots back, like gives her a little bit of encouragement, your people need a new kind of leader. And then she kind of drops right back into, my sister already tried that.
Yeah.
I never understood her idealism. The moment is kind of fleeting, however, as the conversation is broken by Rex, who tells them that he has the council waiting. Ahsoka, with an air of concern in her voice, asks about Master Skywalker. Were you able to contact him?
It's interesting that Rex is the one that breaks that conversation up, because the conversation between her and Bo-Katan is the exact same conversation that she's about to have with Rex on the bridge.
Oh, I know. Isn't it, though?
It's she's in the middle of both of those sides.
Yep.
Obviously, she's the center point of the episode, but she's the center point of the sentiment where Bo-Katan doesn't necessarily want to be a soldier, and then later on where Rex also doesn't necessarily want to be a soldier, but has to come to terms. We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
It's really important, I think, that the way that this episode was written, that Rex is that one that interrupts that moment, and it leads to their moment. It's very nuanced.
He's really as much as Ahsoka is a focal point to this whole arc, Rex really is at the heart of this episode. And he is the one shining beacon for all of clonedom, if I can say that. Do you know what I mean? He's representative of everything in the series up till now.
You watch him go beyond his programming.
Yes, yeah, very much.
As he can, even though he's being programmed even beyond that.
Yeah.
He fights like an individual more than any clone we've ever seen. And we've seen a lot of clones fight like individuals.
It's one of the virtues of the show was those character developments, and how we had our Rexes and our Codys and our Wolfs and our, Fives and the Jessies and Foxes and all of those named guys who were these shining examples of how something that was supposed to be this reliable, very predictable militarized force as you say, grows beyond its programming, and they become something more. They become, they're the humanity of war.
Yeah, and isn't that ironic that they're ostensibly, in the eyes of almost everybody involved except them and the Jedi,
Yeah.
they're not men.
No, they're not. I'm going to touch on that a little bit later, because there's a line where I'm like, oh, wait a minute, is he talking about, a bigger concept, or is he just talking about clones specifically? But we'll get to that. So Rex says that actually he was at the meeting when he left to come and get her. Bo says, you go on. I can handle things from here. And the scene closes with Bo turning back towards that lower level. And there's a very clear narrowing of her eyes. And just like that, her moment of reflection is gone, and it's right back to business as usual.
That's right.
So just let me ask you guys, did you guys pick up on that facial expression bit from her in this moment, where she's very like wide, like, I don't want to say doe-eyed, but for lack of a better word, she's kind of doe-eyed, having that conversation with Ahsoka where they're kind of wistfully, oh, I just wish I was better at this and that and the other thing. And then when she turns to look sort of back towards the refugees, we'll call them, she gets very narrow-eyed, and it's almost like right back into her gruff exterior. Did you pick up on that?
I did. It's sort of like, I mean, she has to be business when it comes to, that's the deeper part of her character.
Yeah.
But I think that listless, like the wistfulness, maybe in that moment when she's saying goodbye, when she,
Yeah.
I think the line is literally, "Goodbye, Ahsoka Tano." She doesn't know.
Yeah, it is.
Right. And there's this, like, she's privy to what Maul says too, if I'm not mistaken. So there's this sense of dread that a few of these characters are privy to. Rex is privy to it. That is, it's almost like their little secret. Like they know that quite possibly there's a plot to destroy the Jedi, and it involves possibly a Jedi, a really powerful Jedi.
Oh yeah.
It's assumed to be a lie, but and then there's a funny thing about horrible times, and that's that you can almost feel dread coming from miles away. And it's not like, you don't have to be a psychic, you don't have to be well educated, like when something horrible is in the zeitgeist, people on the street feel it.
Yeah.
And so someone tuned to war, tuned to the way the shifts in battle, the shifts in the tides, and is very astute like that. I think in that moment she's two people, right? She's this, she has to be a leader. Now there's a power vacuum, and she's got to be that gruff, tough Mandalorian leader.
I'll buy that. Because I got to tell you, I was really I really paused on that for a minute, and I sat there in my chair thinking, like, what's going through her head right now? Because she goes from this like completely open, receptive to completely closed, and like something's gone on here. And then I think about, okay, when's the next time we see her? We don't see her again until Rebels. And in Rebels,
right,
she's still hard exterior, and then we don't see her again until The Mandalorian. And only in The Mandalorian do we see, really, I would say between now and the Clone Wars and her entire arc throughout Rebels, there's virtually no personal growth for her character. She doesn't really, we don't see that until The Mandalorian, when she's talking to Din Djarin, and her, like we said in our Fandalorian review series, her perfunctory, this is the way to Din Djarin was her way of saying there's another way.
And so perhaps, and I think I just thought of it while you said it in the moment.
Yeah.
Because the line she delivers to Ahsoka right before she says goodbye is that my people need another way of being, but my sister tried it and it didn't work.
That's
and so
right.
That turning back to the core of the Mandalorian teachers, that warrior caste inner self,
the way of Mandalore,
is still rejecting a personal thing with her sister. So it's such a personal divide that for 3 years in their teenage life, Obi-Wan didn't even know she had
a sister. Yeah.
So there's something, we could probably go back and have a graphic novel about why they didn't connect,
why they're apart
people.
Yeah.
But I think that probably her decision to want to stay as true to the Mandalorian code and as true to a warrior's code, is influenced heavily by the fact that she didn't agree with her sister personally,
Right.
her view on how Mandalore should be run, if you will. So that makes sense in that moment too, that she would turn immediately, having had that conversation, saying that, no, my sister tried that and it didn't work.
Yeah.
Saying goodbye, that last little vestige of, I'm being kind to a child, essentially, and then now back to work.
It's pretty interesting stuff. And I think we're going to get more. Like, there's no way that we're not going to get more on that character, but I hope that future appearances from her are able to tie that one up for me.
Yeah. And, even if it's a little exposition, I'll be happy.
Yeah, me too. Me too. It doesn't have to be a lot, but give me something. Just a little, throw me a bone here.
Memory flashbacks in Mandalorian season 3.
Yeah, it could be that simple.
Yeah, it's true. And at least this scene shows her starting to attempt to make a change, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to have, this isn't a good place for a character, a light leap in her character.
No, I will definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
The next we get a shot of an exterior shot of a building. It's covered in like dishes and panels that are very indicative of some kind of communications center. Then we get an interior shot, which is funny because the room is empty, save for the holographic images of Mace Windu, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Yoda, and Aayla Secura.
And the guards at the gate to the door to that, the two guards flanking that door were actually 501st, not 332nd. They were 501st. On
the inside or outside?
Outside.
On the outside. Were they 501st?
Yeah, they were.
I'd never even picked up on the...
I kind of got the impression that facility might have been like a portable thing that
maybe like just kind of drop down like,
and then head back up to the Star Destroyer.
But it totally makes sense, right? Because the 332nd is described as being a company sized element, right? Which is a smaller organization within the 501st,
right?
Because that's what Anakin set out to do, is split the 501st so that promote Rex and he can lead the mission to Mandalore with Ahsoka as an advisor.
Commander Rex.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right, Commander Rex.
So this sequence it's pretty cool, and I took the time to flip back and forth between the episode and the film. So for the listeners, if you want to do the same, you're going to go to Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. You're going to go to 100 minutes on your timestamp, and you can bounce back and forth, but it's the same conversation that played out throughout the movie. The movie is a little different because we have the image of Cody showing up saying, reporting that General Kenobi has made contact with General Grievous on Utapau. And so in the film, that's when Mace turns to Anakin and says, go to the Chancellor and report this so that we can maybe find some clues to his real intent. And then you can flip back to the animated series and you can watch it again, but it's from the perspective where Cody has left and Anakin has just been sent off to the Chancellor's office, and then the doors open and in comes Rex and Ahsoka. The conversation that plays out very much the same way it does in the film, with Mace saying, I sense a plot to destroy the Jedi, etc., etc., etc. The council members talk about the removal of the Supreme Chancellor from office, but where the scene cuts in the film, we get an extension of that when Rex and Ahsoka enter the comm center reporting that she has Maul in custody. Yoda praises Ahsoka for her service to the Republic, and she responds by saying that she did her duty as a citizen.
I did my duty as a citizen.
Yoda questions, not as a Jedi? And Ahsoka's response is,
no, not yet.
Actually, I was hoping to speak to General Skywalker. Mace informs her that Anakin has gone to report to the Chancellor. And Ahsoka posits that means that the war could be over soon. Mace coyly replies, that depends on the Chancellor. And when Ahsoka asks, what do you mean? He kind of stonewalls her with this, I'm sorry, citizen.
These matters are for the council to discuss.
And Ahsoka, in her big moment, says, or maybe she doesn't say it, but I mean, makes the choice not to say anything except, I understand.
I understand.
And with that, the holographic images of Mace, Ki-Adi-Mundi, and Aayla Secura wink out until only Yoda is left. Yoda beckons, "More to say, have you?"
Mimicking the line from The Phantom Menace.
Yeah. A message for Skywalker, perhaps? But again, Ahsoka declines, saying that she'll tell him herself when she sees him.
Another moment that could have changed the outcome.
Well, this is where I'm going to dig in on this in a second.
2 moments.
Yoda gives Ahsoka a perfunctory "May the Force be with you," and after he fades out, Rex remarks, and he says it with this, like, there's a bit of bewilderment there. He's like, "You didn't tell them what Maul said about General Skywalker?" And Ahsoka's like, "No, I didn't."
Home point here.
No, I didn't.
No, I didn't.
So I'm just gonna read. I got a big bold thing I wrote, which is sort of my reflections on this, and then we can kind of talk about it sort of at large. But and with that, Ahsoka's failure is complete. I was so pissed off rewatching this scene, especially knowing that Obi-Wan faced the very same situation with Count Dooku, which Ahsoka knows because he fucking told her. Fast forward, and it's easy to see why she declined in The Mandalorian to train Grogu. That's why it's so, no, I can't do it. You know, that when even the greatest, when you see what happens when they fall.
Mm.
So I get that. That adds way more weight to that scene in The Mandalorian. But
She still doesn't trust herself.
well, can we talk about pride here for a second?
They say that pride comes before the fall.
Right. So in her own sense of indignation about how she was treated by the council, she chose not to say anything, and she fucked everybody over.
I think Mace Windu shares some of that blame too, though.
Of course he does. He's
got the same pride going.
Absolutely he does.
Like, you don't want to be a
he's
Jedi.
arrogant as hell in that scene.
Oh my God, is he ever?
I absolutely disagree about Ahsoka. Ahsoka was giving Anakin the benefit of the doubt to the last second. The fact that she wanted to speak to him before she spoke to anybody, including Yoda.
I guess
about
so.
What was going on? She wanted to bring it to him first.
Yeah,
She wanted to go to the horse's mouth, and because she couldn't do that, even to the last second, you got something you want to say to Anakin?
Yeah.
She could have easily said, "Tell Anakin that I think he's Darth Vader." But she held it to herself because that's a thing between a father and a daughter, and a brother and a sister.
And with her previous experience,
from her perspective, regardless of what the council believes, regardless of the balance of the Force prophecy,
right?
Maul is lying to her in that moment to try to turn her to the dark side.
Well, they definitely have that relationship.
As far as Padawan training is considered, you resist that at all costs. So while I firmly believe her decision to not tell them in that moment loses the war for us.
Yeah.
But I don't blame her at all.
You know, with her repeated displays of, you know, traits that she's picked up from both Anakin and Obi-Wan, I still think that there was an avenue for her. She doesn't have to say, you know, he's being lured to the dark side, but in my mind, she should have said something, anything. Swallow your pride for half a second and say, you know, Maul said this, and while I don't believe him, I can't not do anything about it. And I guess that's kind of where you say, Hank, like, she does want to do something about it, but she wants to do it directly.
And the central theme to all Star Wars is hope, right? We agree upon that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Hands down.
So her hope in that moment is that she's going to interact with Anakin before the end. She still hopes that. And that's the thing that maybe clouds her judgment there.
Yeah.
Like your faith in your friends is your weakness. Perhaps in that moment, perhaps because hope has been destroyed in that moment by the Emperor, perhaps that's where hope fails her.
Yeah, maybe.
In a bigger way.
But at the same
time... That's my girl, man. I don't blame her at all.
At the same time, though, her previous experience where somebody, you know, framed her up.
Yeah.
And they just jumped all over her.
They did.
So what's to stop her line of thinking of saying, you know, if I say, you know, Anakin's going to turn, what's to stop them from dropping everything and then, you know, just finishing him off?
Turning on him in a quite lethal way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great exclamation point on what I was thinking, Andy. That's perfect, actually.
Let's talk a little bit.
No reason to trust them.
I'm gonna come back to Mace Windu for a second because, like Andy, you say like he shares some of the burden in this, and I agree with you in his, you know, derisively referring to her as a citizen. But I want to put some context on that when I say that, like, you know, your average citizen of the Republic does not get dispatched on military operations as advisors to bring in a former Sith Lord. Do you know what I mean? Like the context of the mission that she's on, citizen or not, maybe you should listen to her. You know what I mean?
there should have been a debriefing more than just that.
Yeah. So
It's just like, good job. I don't care how you got here. You got Maul. Good job. See you later.
I think emotionally speaking, from what we saw in The Mandalorian, is that she does bear some, at least from an emotional standpoint, she bears some responsibility for Anakin's fate. And I think that plays into her own fears about not wanting to train Grogu. And so for that reason, and for that reason alone, I really, really hope that whether it's in a future season of The Mandalorian or in her own series, I really hope that she gets a face-to-face with Luke Skywalker, where she can get some closure from Luke, who can tell her that he redeemed, he came back.
You are right to have that hope.
Do you know what I mean? Like, she needs that closure, and I hope that, if we're going to do anything else with the Luke Skywalker character, this is the big payoff that's going to do it for Ahsoka, right?
I hope that that's not till the end of her character, because that's pretty much that's as far as she could go. That gives her all the closure she would need, is like that ends her book. And so I want that for her, but I want it to be at like 10 years down the road.
Give it to me at the very end. Yeah, totally. I'm down for that. But I think, emotionally, thematically, she deserves that much.
She might be the best developed character in all of Star Wars in terms of her arc, in terms of where she still has to go, even though we know she needs to get there. In terms of the slow and nuanced way that she got there, the fact that she skirts that line between like Jedi and something else.
Something
not
else. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And for me, she's one of she's top 5. If the show keeps going the way it's going, and her show is what I think it'll be, she's really edging towards the top 3 of my favorite Star Wars characters of all time.
Yeah, I would. I don't even have after Obi-Wan, it all kind of blurs for me. No, it'd be Obi-Wan, then probably Luke, and then after that, it gets kind of blurry. So, but I would say she's top 5 for me.
Yeah. Yes.
Top 5 for sure.
You're listening to Fandom Power.
In our next shot, we have a full contingent of loyalists and the 332nd on parade out in front of a Republic shuttle. And from the building at the end of the platform, a door slides open and we see Bo-Katan flanked by Ursa Wren and an escort of other loyalists as they bring out Maul in this purpose-built cell that I think she describes it as a relic of a bygone era from the Jedi War, the Mandalorian Jedi War,
when they had to contain those crazy Force wielders.
Yeah, when we had reason to imprison you Force wielding maniacs.
So I'm super interested in the technology. I don't often want to get into the technology of Star Wars, like it's a fantasy more than science fiction. I'm super interested in the technology that can suppress Force abilities.
Ray shields.
And is it so that you just can't use the Force outside the limits of that shield?
I guess so.
Ostensibly it's magic. And so
Star Wars magic.
More magic. And so that box is really interesting. And it actually, I was writing a role-playing, just an adventure, basically, where a couple of Mandalorian characters are in a race with a couple of new Jedi Order characters to secure that item, which is still on that Star Destroyer crashed on that planet.
On the Venator. That's really cool.
Reasons. Yeah. Because clearly it's a benefit to both sides, whoever gets it first.
Ray shields have foiled Jedi before, where, when something is ray shielded, they can't cut through it, and we don't see them overtly try to do anything Force wieldy.
That's some crazy. That's right. That's true. We don't see Obi-Wan doesn't try to Force choke Dooku when he's in those shackles.
No, exactly.
Gideon has a version of those blue glowing shackles on Grogu.
Yeah,
we've seen it a few times.
Maybe that is the
curious about the tech, because that seems very, it's like there's like computer circuits and lines.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Plus he's shackled and gagged, and there's
Yeah, and the gag thing that kind of got me. I'm like, is that a life support thing because it's hermetically sealed, or is that you don't get to talk, or both?
There is a moment there when they freeze on when he's on the ship proper, and they freeze on him a bit, and he's breathing, and it's fogging the glass up.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
And it's going, and so there's a moment there when he closes his eyes, and you can see him feeling the dark side.
Maybe it's like a bite block or something that it's.
Well, maybe he can. I don't know. But there's a scene where he breathes in. And
That's right.
Closes his eyes.
Yeah.
He's drinking the dark side, and all the fog disappears.
Yep.
And it doesn't come back from it. Like he's holding his breath.
Oh, interesting.
It's
Reaching out
awesome.
to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. So it goes like this. Ahsoka's like, I thought your sister outlawed such devices. And Bo-Katan simply says,
She did.
this is the last one. But is it?
Love the artwork on it too.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The Mandalorian style Spartan image, helmet imagery on the central portion of the door, and all of the sort of, I don't know, relief kind of carving of the thing. It looks metal, but it looks stone workish at the same time.
Very reminiscent of a carbonite block.
Yeah.
But there's a moment where there's a transition, and I don't know if it's in this scene, but there's a transition from Rex's helmet to the central character on the.
Oh yeah. That's right. Yeah.
If you will. Yeah.
Yep.
Reminding us that Rex is a Mandalorian.
Yeah. Really. Eh?
Yeah.
As the cell is loaded onto the shuttle, the two warriors, Bo and Ahsoka, they face each other and they have their goodbyes with the traditional, the warrior, the forearm clasp, and this is the line, as you said, Hank. The
Goodbye, Ahsoka Tano.
The shuttle departs Mandalore, and we get a shot of the interior of the shuttle from Maul's perspective in his cell.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, it hit me that up until now, the only musical cues through this episode so far have been pieces of that same piece of haunting music from last episode.
And it's almost been a constant drone in the background.
Yeah.
It creates super eerie feeling, and there's a lot of tension by this point of the episode.
So
part of the tension is that we already know what's about to happen.
Oh yeah. That's the thing
like,
too. It was literally, I was tight in the chest. I was nervous. I mean, and I know what's happening. I know what's going to happen. And I'm like, oh my God.
I use it myself, akin to watching myself get a needle.
Oh yeah.
So it's all anticipation, and it's going to be horrible, and then it's never as bad as it is, and it still sucks. But if you look away, it's never as bad as if you look at it.
yeah, exactly.
And so for me, it's that I know this is going to hurt, and I'm sitting here and I'm watching it anyway.
So the piece of music, it's actually called Padme's Ruminations on the Revenge of the Sith soundtrack.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In Revenge of the Sith, if you go to timestamp 109.07, you'll see it with Padme sitting very pregnant in her apartment, looking out over the city at the Jedi Temple, while Anakin is sitting in the council chambers.
A lot of single notes on a piano, a minor key.
Yeah. But that's the piece of music. Padme's Ruminations. It took me a while to figure that out because I had to go through the whole soundtrack, because they thematically, there's 2 or 3 other pieces of music, like Anakin's betrayal and some of the other ones, like the assault on the temple, have similar musical themes. Thematically, they blend together.
That's right.
The shuttle lands back on the Venator class Star Destroyer, and Maul's Mandalorian cell is placed in the brig. Ahsoka and Rex make their way up to one of the bridges, because Venators have 2 of them, and the ship jumps into hyperspace. Talk about the tension in that sequence for a second here, and I just want to, once again, if I haven't done this enough, not to gush at length, but I just want to give props where they're due. Dave Filoni, your writing is supreme, and Saul Ruiz, your directing here, particularly your choice of camera angles, I felt so... Oh, this is the part where I was like literally almost in tears watching it, because you've got this sequence, it plays really, really hard, I think, on the viewer's emotional connection to the clones. And if you've been watching the series faithfully up until now, you probably have a similar emotional connection like most of us do. But what this sequence does is something that we typically take for granted throughout the series, is we see the clones going about their shipboard duties. You know, just routine maintenance stuff, like the hangar guys are doing hangar stuff, and the escort, you know, they're just doing their jobs, and they're completely oblivious of what's about to happen. And I think the final punctuation sort of comes from, you know, Ahsoka and Rex as they stride through the onto the forward portion of the bridge, as they walk up to the viewport, and there's those pair of clone Navy troopers, and they fucking salute the two of them. And I'm like, right. Oh, you know, it was like just, oh, that's so, it's so painful to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's the salute, and as they approach the window, Rex breaks the tension with his question, "Something on your mind?" And I'm glad that, you know, like, if it had gone any longer without somebody saying or doing something, I'd have been like bawling like a baby.
Oh, it's the exact amount of tension again.
Oh my God.
The Filoni Wars is the greatest thing ever created.
Yeah. Oh, it really is. So in this sequence here on the bridge in front of the viewport, Rex and Ahsoka have this, what I feel is a kind of a deep moment where she reflects on her existence as a Jedi, talking about she was never meant to be a soldier, and yet since becoming a Padawan, that's all she's ever known. Rex sort of answers back from his own existential crisis by saying, well, that's all he's ever known.
I've known no other way.
And it causes, you know, some mixed feelings. Oh, this is the part I was kind of curious about, because he says it causes mixed feelings for some clones.
Many people wish it never happened.
Is he referring to people of the galaxy, or people as in the clones are people? Because it works on both levels.
Maybe.
He might mean it on both levels there, but I think he means that, like, in general, that sentiment that we had from before, where they're not men.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just tools.
But amongst themselves,
they're ostensibly droids. They're droids.
Well, this is the thing, right? On that one level, does it work in the sense that Rex is referring to the clones as people, and he sees them that way? You know, it does work on that way.
The existential crisis is the next line.
Yeah, because he says, but because without it, they wouldn't even exist.
So I guess something good came of the war after all.
Yeah, Ahsoka, finding her own silver lining in the moment, goes on.
Then perhaps some good has come from all of it.
And says that, well, the Republic couldn't ask for better soldiers, nor I, a better friend.
And see, this is a human moment. We know that they're friends. We know that they have immense amount of respect for each other, but Clone Wars is so fast paced. And that's the thing about this episode, is this episode crawls along.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's about to get very fast, but the first half of this episode is moving like a sand crawler through the desert.
It's all tension, though.
Right? And so that's what this is about.
Yep, it is. And then the two of them, they salute each other. And I'm like, oh, can you just stop stop trying to make me cry?
Yeah.
Oh. So at that point, the doors slide open from the rear of the bridge, and another naval officer or naval trooper comes in, and he says he's got the latest briefing. Rex asks Ahsoka if she wants to come and check it out, and she opts to stay on the bridge instead.
You go. I'm sure it's more good news.
Cool little moment there. We get that. We've seen it many times in Star Wars before. The camera is behind the character. It's a full or near full body shot, peering out the viewport, arms folded behind the back. We've seen Tarkin do it. We've seen other officers do it. Now here's Ahsoka doing it. Any thoughts on what she's thinking at that moment? Because there's that moment where she's just left to her own, staring into space.
I think it's her moment to breathe and try and reach out too.
Think so?
I think so.
Maybe.
What does any captain think on the bridge of their ship when they're alone? Sometimes I go out on the balcony of the building I'm building, because it just seems so much is so overwhelming in the scope of the project and millions of dollars at hand and all this pressure. And I just need to stare at the sky for a second and attempt to think about nothing.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what it is. And in that moment, I think when you're trying to quiet your mind, which is a Jedi thing to do in that moment, that could be why she connects so deeply with Anakin, and that she's reaching out through the Force.
Yes.
Maybe even for Anakin specifically.
Maybe.
She finds him.
Well, interestingly enough, with that sort of in mind, our next kind of beats, things take a turn. We are back in the brig, and there's a quick shot of Maul in his cell. His eyes are closed. Maybe he's sleeping. Maybe. I don't know. But suddenly, the air is punctuated by the sound of an igniting lightsaber. Maul's eyes immediately open wide, and we can hear the exchange between Mace Windu, Anakin, and Darth Sidious as it's unfolding in the Chancellor's office on Coruscant. Mace Windu can be heard saying, "You must choose," and this is the line, the Anakin, "No, I need him." And then from the Emperor, "Unlimited." And this is different than the last crossover moment in the comm center where the voice cast, they recreated the whole conversation. This actually uses the actual lines from the film. So it's Sam Jackson, Hayden Christensen, and Ian McDermott, yeah, which I thought was a real nice touch. No sense on having your voice cast redo it when you have the perfect audio track to pull from.
I believe Ian McDermott does the voice of Palpatine and the Emperor in all of Season 7.
Does he really?
I believe so.
I'm going to have to check that. I'm not sure.
I'm in.
On the bridge, we see Ahsoka stagger, grasping at her head, and we can hear Hayden Christensen, "What have I done?" Still clutching her head, Ahsoka whispers, "Anakin." And then the scene changes to Rex, standing in front of a holographic image of Darth Sidious, as we hear Sidious utter the fateful words, "Execute
Order 66.
And of course, Rex.
Yes, Lord Sidious.
The doors to the briefing room whoosh open, and Ahsoka rushes in to tell Rex, "It's Anakin. I feel
like
something terrible has happened." Legacy line. Like Obi-Wan at the destruction of Alderaan.
Well,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But Rex is clearly not himself as he stands there motionless, his helmet quivering in his hand for a moment before it drops to the deck.
Rex?
You can hear some radio chatter between the pair of 332nd clones that are standing behind Ahsoka. And they turn...
Even the order.
Yeah, they turn to draw down on her, but Rex stops him. "No!"
I'll do it.
Ahsoka asks Rex, "What's happening?" And struggling against his inhibitor chip's programming, he's able to blurt out,
Find him. Fives.
"Find him. Find Fives." And then he opens fire.
And the tear.
Yeah.
The tear fights it.
Dashing forward, Ahsoka knocks Rex into the holotable, draws her lightsabers, and kills the two 332nd clones by deflecting their blaster fire back at them.
How's that gotta feel?
Well, it's...
Just that moment, the first time you have to kill one of your own.
Yeah.
How's that gotta feel?
All the while still trying to reason with Rex, the rear doors of the briefing room open and more clones pour in, hell-bent on carrying out the order to kill the Jedi. Knowing that she's outgunned Ahsoka at this point, she starts deflecting all the incoming fire, which creates a hole in the deck above her.
That's so cool, because she could have killed everyone in the room, including Rex.
Yeah, potentially.
That moment is awesome. I love that moment, because she's taking all those blast 360 degrees, and she's just knocking them upwards.
There's a moment
their escape route. Yeah.
When the initial sort of the door and the first two guys that are in the door start firing, and she kind of gives them a force push out, and then two guys roll in on either side of the door, and it's like, this is the never-ending, supply of bad guys that the writers can just keep throwing. And so, could she have killed everybody, or would there have been this Because I took it as you're outgunned and you need space and time to think.
Well, she certainly could have killed a lot of them in that scene.
I think so.
Could have been deflecting the blaster bolts back at them instead of towards an escape route. Now,
True enough.
That's better. That's a better tactical maneuver. But she's making some you're a Jedi. You got to make split timing decisions. And you've never faced anything like this. This is the people that you fought with that their capability. You know how good they are at this.
Yeah. This is what they were designed to do. These are,
This
is an entire population of people whose sole purpose is to kill.
And all that stuff has got to go through your head, no matter how fast. I know the scene is 10, 30 seconds somewhere in there, but all that stuff has to occur to you that this isn't just Rex and the guys on the ship.
Nope.
This is the entire army of the Grand Republic.
Yeah. She's able to force leap out the hole that she's created.
And they're left thinking that she's already been taken down.
Yeah, exactly. First they think, we got her. Then the smoke clears and we see the hole, and they're kind of left there standing looking through it. But not to make this about me, but as somebody who's been under fire, I found it really cool that she was able to maintain sort of the presence of mind that she did in that situation. Because I don't know if I would have. Like, that level of intensity, it's no longer conscious thought. It is drills and training and survival instinct. Of course, I'm not a Jedi either, so I mean, I'm not trained to think.
But when you flip back to
Don't
that
sell
moment,
yourself short.
Thank you.
When you flip back to Revenge of the Sith, though, there are a few Jedi. It catches them completely off guard, and they're
all caught off guard. Yeah.
So it speaks to her levels.
Oh yeah, very much so. So Rex dispatches a pair of clones to the brig with orders to kill Maul.
Execute Maul.
Yes, sir.
At that time, he starts formulating a plan to sweep through the ship for Ahsoka, and we're treated to a little bit of exposition on Order 66 that never came up in the film. So not only is the order to kill the Jedi for treason against the Republic, but it also, as we learn, extends to any soldier that refuses to carry out the order.
Any soldier that does not comply with the order will also be executed for treason.
So it's weird. There's a choice there is the decision to kill Maul tactical, then actually nothing to do with Order 66. He's not a Jedi.
I wonder if they
a
just
tactical decision.
I wonder if they
Rex
just
is still
take
thinking
that
like a normal
as-
clone. Like that's a really wise maneuver.
And he's a Force user.
Right.
I mean, on its most simplistic of levels, he's another Force user. Take him out.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's talk about the second half of that, the order that it applies to any soldier, because that raises some questions for me. Do we think that second line was always built in to Order 66?
Or was it amended after Fives?
And if it was amended, how did you get that programming out there? Because the chips are biological.
Here's how they got the programming out there. I agree with your first two statements, absolutely, both of you. Here's how they got the program out there, because I just watched the episode where Five dies.
Yeah.
Fives died. And at the very end, I can't remember the doctor's name, but she's from Camino, and she's with the Chancellor.
Lamasu?
Or maybe he's even the Emperor proper at this point.
Oh, okay.
They're discussing this thing, and basically...
Was it the doctor or was it Tonway?
No, I think it's the doctor.
Okay.
I don't know if it's Conway at all, but it certainly could have been. But the upshot is that they prepared an inoculation against the parasite that they blamed this on.
Right.
They shared a water bottle. Tup and Fives got a parasite which caused their chips to degrade, and they prepared an inoculation for every single member of the Grand Army.
That's
and
right.
The Jedi approved it, and that's how they got the programming in.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. So then I really don't have to go back in on this, because for a second there I was like, wait a minute. The chips are biological and have been there since birth. What the hell's going on?
Firmware update.
Yeah, really.
Well, there's also a really good line that where it actually explains everything away from that Fives episode, where Shaak Ti, Fives, and Palpatine are all in the interrogation chamber, and they're having a conversation. And I think it's Tonwee in that scene too. And Palpatine says to Shaak Ti, a plot by the Separatists that goes back before the war started to control the clones? That's highly unlikely. And then Shaak Ti has to concede that you were right, that's highly unlikely. And then Tonwee is like, more than highly unlikely, it's impossible.
They're all snickering.
That's where they settled. That's the thing that settles it, that this isn't a plot to destroy the Jedi. This is an errant parasite.
Yeah. This is completely, this is a medical thing.
Right.
Oh, disappointed that I forgot that point. Still made for some good conversation. So thanks.
There's so many. There's so much to cover.
Back in the brig, Maul watches helplessly as his clone guards enter the room with the intent to kill him.
First time I've ever seen fear in his eyes.
Yeah, really. They open the Mandalorian Jedi cell, and then one of the guards notices Maul looking over his shoulder, like past him. Mm-hmm. The guard turns around, sees it's Ahsoka. he's able to mutter out a quick "look out" before he and his partner are forcibly knocked out by Ahsoka.
It's very reminiscent of the Grogu scene from Mandalorian.
Oh yeah, ragdolling.
Wham, wham.
Standing in front of Maul with her lightsaber pointed, Ahsoka says, "Don't make me regret this." And then she frees him. Maul incredulously remarks, "You've survived." She demands to know if Maul is responsible for what's going on, and he tells her outright that he has no idea. But then goes on to say, "But surely you have felt it." The voice is crying out.
The death.
Ahsoka relates that the clones have turned against her, including Rex.
And that's when it hits him.
Yes, I mean, Maul in his, that is he a madman or not, kind of dips into his like, lunacy kind of. He laughs out loud and deduces Darth Sidious's plan to have the clones turn on the Jedi, and goes so far as to actually calling him brilliant.
Brilliant.
Yeah. For a brief moment, Ahsoka looks at him with disbelief, and then she composes herself. Maul, thinking that Ahsoka has come to him for guidance and leadership, praises her for doing the right thing, only for her to tell him at lightsaber point that you don't get it.
I'm not here to team up with you.
I need a diversion, and you're it. Now go cause some chaos. It's what you're good at.
Mm-hmm.
And as they leave the cell, Maul kind of beckons for a weapon, care to give a guy a fighting chance?
Yeah.
And she's like, "I'm not rooting for you."
Now get going.
And then they split up and go their own ways.
So I guess if you want to blame Ahsoka for anything in this episode, she unleashes Darth Maul on the galaxy, consolidating all the crime families for a couple of decades.
Yeah, I mean, that the plan for them to go into hiding, I mean, he must have had a long-term plan for that. I'm sure without a succession plan that they probably would have just gone back to their own respective territories and whatever they were doing.
Right. Yeah, those alliances would have shattered probably.
I think so.
Shattered.
There you go. The Crimson Dawn shattered. Well, not the Crimson Dawn, the Shadow Collective.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, clone patrols scurry about the ship, and a squad of 332nd report to Rex. Maul has escaped, and there's no sign of Ahsoka. So Rex then orders that all the escape pods be destroyed, and to increase the security presence on the hangar deck.
He's still the best they have.
Oh my god, yeah. Making her way into what amounts to a maintenance room, Ahsoka activates the 3 astromech droids that just happen to be there.
But doesn't that scene give you the reminiscence of Kenobi sneaking around the Death Star?
Yeah, they even use a similar angle where she kind of comes, from the right. Yeah, from the right side of the frame, she comes into frame and kind of looks 3/4 at the camera and then moves off again. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, good call.
Get a bit of a Phantom Menace vibe here in the room with the droids as the droids kind of whittly beep boop and they all come online.
Yeah. Trying to quiet them down. Shh.
So we've got R7A7, that's the red one, who, before my research piece, I did not put it together that that's her personal astromech from before she left the Jedi Order.
That's right.
We have, who else do we have? We have the cone-headed guy, RGG1, affectionately referred to as Gigi throughout the episode. And then we have CH33P, Cheap, who is very much the same model as Chopper, voiced by Dave Filoni.
I think I read an article a while back where they were toying with the idea
of retconning him as Chopper.
Yeah, but then they thought it might just take a bit too much away.
It didn't for me.
Actually, don't the droids all die?
Not in this episode.
No,
not in this episode.
Spoilers.
They all survive. They all survive this episode.
Okay.
For me, first time viewing it. So keep in mind, right? Season 7 of Clone Wars comes out in 2020. By now, Rebels is over, and I'm a huge Rebels fan. Love the Ghost cast. In my mind, I'm like, hey, it's Chopper before he got broken and rebuilt. When I found out that it wasn't, I was disappointed. I love the idea that, Chopper's been around since the Clone Wars, which he probably has been.
No, certainly. Like, these robots last for hundreds of years, ostensibly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, your other connection there is if Chopper was voiced by Dave Filoni, so was Cheap.
He is. Yeah, he totally is.
Yeah. I think the intention was to make it Chopper, and then something about that didn't work out for them.
Maybe. So the droids, they immediately bleep and blurp a barrage of questions towards Ahsoka, and she just reacts like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why the clones are acting the way they are. But she says that we might be able to do something about it.
Interesting that the Republic droids weren't programmed with an Order 66 of their own.
Maybe droids just weren't deemed a credible, like a security risk.
Mm-hmm.
Which is funny, too, because it's consistent with what we know about astromech droids and how their, legends really played on it. And even the films and the other canonical references to them, they actually talk about, and droids in general, that if you don't regularly wipe their minds, they develop a personality.
Yeah, there's a line, I think, from Rise of Skywalker. It's Leia's line, always trust a droid, or something along those lines.
Yeah, always. I think Rey said that. Always trust a droid.
Right, but she's referencing Leia's line.
Oh, yeah. So no surprise, R7 has developed some loyalties to Ahsoka, despite her no longer being a member of the Grand Army of the Republic.
That's right.
So she instructs R7 to patch into the ship's central computer, searching for any files related to Clone Trooper 5s. R7 locates and plays a holo from the Kamino, and I think it's the same doctor, Hank.
Yes.
Detailing that the Republic Senate Committee accepted the finding that 5s experienced a malfunction in his inhibitor chip. A chip that was placed in all the clones, purportedly in place to reduce independence and aggression. She then continues that a grievance report was filed by Rex.
A grievance report was filed by CT-7567.
R7 tells Ahsoka that report is sealed. And Ahsoka says, well, maybe we can get into it using Anakin's passcode.
8108.
Yes. So we get into that report, and we see a holo of Rex, and he talks about his suspicion that the inhibitor chips may have a larger purpose, one that they don't fully understand, even though the report is likely to fall on deaf ears.
And that's something that we never got in that little 4 arc. The arc from season 6 is that you're sort of left with Rex, he's holding 5s after he died. The episode
That's right,
ends
yeah.
there, he's holding him, but you don't get the sense from that episode that he believed him.
Yeah.
And this report is proof that Rex knew what was about to happen,
yeah.
Or like that. Well, that knew something greater was at stake here, but didn't know exactly what. Well, that Rex believed 5s in that moment, and that's what that report's about. And that's why he fights his programming.
Yeah.
He's fighting for 5s in that moment. That's why that's why he invokes his name. Find 5s.
Find 5s, yeah.
Find him. That's his link to to overcoming he still has all those memories.
Yeah.
Ostensibly just an order, although you're compelled to obey it, can't eclipse all the memories you have.
No, and those experiences, I mean, they're there.
So whatever, that's got to be a powerful thing embedded in them anyway, to just turn your average clone against, but for someone who's evolved, who's been allowed to evolve, because certainly certain clones wouldn't have been allowed.
Well, this is it. Like,
Anakin's a different kind of leader, a different kind of Jedi, right? You're going to become a different kind of clone captain under Anakin's. You're going to have to get used to his crazy madness and his nuances and his
droid analogy,
creativity, right?
The droid analogy of being able to wipe their minds doesn't apply to a biological creature. It's certainly not without returning to Kamino for some kind of surgical intervention, right? Mm-hmm. So what separates the front line, the rank and file clone, from guys like Rex and Wolf and 5s and all those guys who have these like crazy development arcs?
I think it might be your proximity to the main characters. And I don't mean that in terms of for story purposes. Certainly we've seen clones that were completely innocuous have big, poignant arcs. Like the one that comes to mind, I can't remember the character's name, but the clone that defects when Rex is wounded on that planet, and he goes and he's got Twi'lek kids.
Oh, right. Yes, I know.
Right.
I remember the one you're talking about. Yep.
Right. And so, and then they have a great, and that's probably where some of Rex's introspection from this episode comes from. There's something more to being alive than just being a soldier. Like the life is a gift part. So it's something to come to terms with. It's deep, man. It
really is. Does a genetically created biological organism have a midichlorian count?
Maybe.
Well,
that just came to me in the moment, by the way. I didn't actually write that.
It certainly does if it's just a clone. Rey has a midichlorian count. She's a child of a clone.
She sure does.
And the body
She's
of
a child of a clone. She's not a clone.
Oh, you're right.
It skips a generation because her father was useless to Palpatine.
I was going to say Finn, but he's not a clone either. He's a conscript.
He's just a kid. Yeah, he's a conscript.
But Palpatine's new body would be a clone body.
Yes,
that is true.
But it couldn't contain his abilities. That's
Just
why
'cause
it
they
decayed.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So they couldn't pump enough midichlorians into him.
Nothing like touching on one of the most divisive subjects in all of Star Wars.
For me, it creates the possibility of one of the best villains you could have in that, and that's essentially a Sith vampire or a Mandalorian vampire that runs around the galaxy draining the blood of Force
draining
users
midichlorians,
and literally getting infusions to give himself midichlorians.
Oh,
that's what a creepy villain! That's amazing.
Well, there's some fan fiction there for you.
I got it.
By the way, it's WES when you're putting my name in the credits as a
hell yeah.
Okay.
There's no T on that?
No, there isn't. Meanwhile, Maul, despite being unarmed, is presently making short work of a clone patrol that he's encountered. Using the Force to rend some deck plating, he uses it to decapitate a pair of clones and then crushes another. The patrol calls for backup, saying that Maul is moving towards the hangar. The clones, now falling back, try to seal a blast door, but one of the soldiers gets his arm caught and it is amputated. As Maul kneels down, we hear the comlink on the severed arm go off, and a clone voice says, "Close the blast doors. We want to control his approach."
He's strolling through that, too.
Yeah. Yeah, like he's not even breaking a sweat.
He is so the dark side is peaking right now, and he is so powerful right now.
For a guy who just said, "Care to give a guy a fighting chance?" Like, did you really need it?
At the same time, I'd kind of like to see Maul fight with a blue lightsaber.
Well, that'd be cool too.
It would be cool.
So, with her plan in motion, Ahsoka pre-positions R7 and Gigi in a hallway junction. The droids see Rex and a group of clones approach, and as they pass, R7 trundles out into the hallway, bumping into Rex, causing him to stop. Rex, now separated from his troops, triggers the second droid, Cheap, who rolls out using his scomp link to close all the doors in the junction, cutting off Rex from his troops. R7 then plays a pre-recorded holo message from Ahsoka, where she tells him that she saw his report on Fives and that what is happening isn't his fault.
I saw your report on Fives.
Their minds were programmed, and she can help them. Drawing his pistols on R7, he demands, "Where is she?" And you can hear the whoosh in the background, and from behind you can hear Ahsoka say, "Right here."
I'm right here.
Rex turns to engage Ahsoka, only to be stunned unconscious by R7 and his little electro stun probe or whatever it is. Ahsoka and the droids, with Rex laying across the top of their domes, they depart the junction as the clones are trying to break their way in, which they do, but not before they can close another set of blast doors to make their escape and head off towards the medical bay.
Okay, let's get him to the medical bay.
Arriving at the medical bay, they place Rex on I guess it's like a surgical table, and they begin to scan him in search of his inhibitor chip.
Yes.
There's at this point we see that there's an FX medical droid there assisting with the scan, which we've seen before. First in Empire Strikes Back was the droid. I think was kind of tending to the Bacta tank when Luke was immersed.
That's right.
It's the one that looks like a giant patio heater.
The one that had the action figure had 8 arms.
Oh yeah,
on every single one of them.
It was a lamppost. The lamppost droid
with the little head that.
Yeah. Telescoping head.
Might as well have been just a prop, but they made an action figure of it. It's great.
Everyone gets an action figure.
Yeah, man.
Meanwhile, the same group of clones on the chase attempt to open the door while Gigi tries to hold them off. The medical scans prove unsuccessful, and Ahsoka, trying a different approach, takes Rex's head gently in her hands, and she begins to chant the same mantra that we see Chirrut Imwe use in Rogue One. I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me.
I remember in one of our other episodes, it might have been a broader episode, you were asking what you thought that might be.
Yeah.
Do you remember that conversation? I think I figured it out.
I do remember that conversation.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, I think I figured it out. I think in that moment, it's a version of the Jedi mind trick. And that Rex isn't actually saying those words, but that she's Vulcan mind melding with him, if you will. That he's saying her words, that's actually her taking control of his brain.
I think so too.
Using the Force, and when she's sort of entered his consciousness, whatever Kylo Ren does to Rey in that moment, whatever Obi-Wan does to Luke in that moment, after the Sand people have knocked him out, she connects with him on that level, and that's what brings the location of the inhibitor chip to light. And it's just her ability to explore her own mind in the Force, and she's just literally put herself inside Rex. They've connected.
I think so too.
Intimately.
There's definitely a link there, like you say, using the Vulcan mind meld analogy.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of thought maybe there was something else to it, that the chant is sort of helps with the connective piece, like when you're making a phone call and you know, going back, early sitcom land where, you know, Andy of Mayberry would pick up the phone and he'd say, you know, Clara, can you connect me to such and such? And she'd physically plug in to somewhere else, right? And I feel like her, you know, I'm one with the Force and the Force is with me, is her plugging in. But I had a slightly different take, or maybe I guess we can call it an addition to, because I agree with what you're saying. But I wondered, like, with that whole idea of the malfunctioning chip, you know, the chips they're buried in there. So I kind of thought she was actually altering his biology to make it detectable.
Oh, possibly.
Maybe.
I mean, it, in the end, it comes out to the effect is the same thing. It's the hows and the whys and the whats. But I just thought maybe, you know, that the Kaminoans had taken such steps to conceal the chip that the only way to find it was to change the biology ever so slightly to allow the scanner to pick it up. You know,
makes sense.
Well, for me, it's about the Force abilities we've seen Jedi wield before, and I've certainly seen Jedi many times manipulate the mind of another being,
right?
But I've never seen them alter the biology of another being.
Except so to me, I felt that maybe this was an extension of the Force healing that we've seen used.
That is altering the biology of another being.
Yeah, you know, with Rey and the snake and
Grogu and
is that
we're
in
all
the similar? Yeah,
solution in between there somewhere. I think
yeah,
you're right.
Somewhere in there is some kind of like, oh yeah, there's plausibility there.
Because if she's employing Force healing, maybe it's just manipulating the brain to reject this foreign material.
Like trigger an antibody or an immune response so that we can at least see the area that we're looking for.
And then with that triggering it, then the scanner can pick it up.
Sure.
For me, I felt she's inside his mind. The scanner's not sensitive enough to pick this up, but the Force caused it to ping. Like she sent like a sonar wave of Force out, as it washed over his physical brain, it pinged off the thing, which lit it up on the sensor.
Maybe it's
somewhere in there we're correct.
So I'm gonna throw a third one in there just to go back to our last one. She got the midichlorians to light up because those are detectable.
Yeah, that's possible too. Tweet
All right.
Filoni. Let's go. I want an answer.
Ahsoka orders R7 to remove the chip and stands ready to defend the room as Gigi can no longer hold off the advancing clones with its scomp link. With lightsabers in hand, she deflects the initial barrage of blaster fire and force pushes 2 clones down the hallway. 2 more clones enter the room at the same time. Rex is beginning to come to on the table. Struck by blaster fire in the shoulder, Ahsoka drops one of her lightsabers and is forced back against the foot of Rex's bed. She calls desperately to Gigi to close the door when a hail of blaster fire erupts from behind her and drops the encroaching clones, and the door snaps shut. The camera spins, and it's Rex sitting up, both pistols in hand, and he's okay. As the episode winds down, Rex apologizes for trying to kill her. And
Legacy line.
Yeah.
Those are kids.
Ahsoka says, "How widespread is this?" And he bluntly tells her, with some kind of, almost a bit of fear there, "It's all of us. The Grand Army of the Republic has been ordered to hunt down and destroy the Jedi Knights." And in our closing shot, we see R7 and GG as they roll back away from the door, and cutting torches are starting to burn their way around the door jamb. Fade to black. There's a lot going on in that episode.
Yep.
So much emotion, so much tension, so much heartbreak.
The Republic shatters.
Yeah. I don't even know what to say at the end of this one.
We actually did a really good job. I thought there would be like a lot more unpacking of the emotion, but we kind of hit it as it was happening.
I think so.
You're left with exactly what they need you to be left with there. If you're a fan, this is the moment that hope is almost extinguished from the galaxy. And as good as the prequels were, and as good as reading the novels was, this is the moment that we needed. It makes it so heavy. And since we were little kids, like all three of us, we've known that the moment that Darth Vader falls, that moment has to be so tragic. For whatever reason, it didn't come off as, it was an event. We watched an event happen, Revenge of the Sith, but these moments make it just
that
so
much more
tragic.
impactful.
I remember going to see Revenge of the Sith in the theater. I had actually bought on. I was like really fully on the hype train. The 2-part comic book adaptation dropped a week or 2 weeks before the movie. I devoured it, which just served to increase my want to see this movie. And then I go into it because at the time my kids were young, but my kids were my oldest son was of the generation that the prequel trilogy is his Star Wars, and naturally his favorite character, Anakin Skywalker.
Yes.
And I had to tell his mother, he's not going to like this movie. She's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "This is the movie where he turns, and there's some pretty implicit imagery that suggests that he kills a bunch of children." And so, if you were of that, and I shouldn't even say that. I don't want to sound ageist. Again, I don't want to sound ageist. That's come up twice now in the last couple of weeks. But if you grew up on the prequels and the prequels is your Star Wars, this episode is the reason to want to watch that. What is it, a 3-hour, 4-hour cut of the film with these episodes spliced in?
Did you guys find that?
I went through all of the instructions on how to get it. I have not pulled the trigger on it, but this episode really is the one for me where it's like, yep, I want it. I want to see it. I'm going to devote the time to go through it because there's just so much more context. Even in the little bit of research that I did sitting here in the studio, flipping back and forth from the film to the series to see the same sequence from those different perspectives added so much more for me.
When I first heard they were going to overlap, like there was the rumor that we were going to catch up and then go shoot past. I got really excited. Certainly, I always wondered. I shouldn't say always wondered because it's retroactive wondering, but as soon as I was introduced to the characters of Ahsoka and Rex, I had to know where they were during that because they're completely absent from the films. Rex isn't completely absent from the films, but he's certainly not there in that moment. Ahsoka's not there in that moment. Even Obi-Wan's not there in that moment. He catches up to him before anybody else. But if they had managed to pull this level of emotion off in that movie, I don't know, he might have won an Academy Award. But it's perfect. It's so perfect. It's that it needed to be made personal and human, and the love story wasn't doing it. I know it's important to the character, but it just wasn't doing it. And this does it. It really does it.
Yeah. It really really empathized. For me, this episode, Rex was my, was the character for me in this one, where I empathized with him so much. Where he was we don't really see any struggle. So he's, visually speaking, he's the antithesis of Cody in this episode, where Cody is just like, yep, programming's on, bitches. And just, you've seen the memes about, of Obi-Wan, old Ben Kenobi running into a stormtrooper, and the stormtrooper says, General Kenobi, and Obi-Wan's like, Cody? And he's like, yeah, I missed you. And he's like, I missed you too. He's like, no, back in the war, I missed you by not hitting you when I shot. So even guys like Cody, who arguably, had some development, were still just cogs in the machine. And so
not at the
funny
point.
moment for me in Revenge of the Sith is the just before Order 66 is announced, Cody hands back his lightsaber.
Oh, I know.
It's a whole different fight if Obi-Wan
doesn't have a lightsaber.
He confronts Anakin on Mustafar.
You almost get that sense of like he does it and has that like he has that moment where he's like, oh, like, what did I just oh, I had it and then oh. One of the other things the episode did for me was gave me a moment to give thought towards, our next real visit with Rex later on in Rebels, when we meet him with Gregor and the other clone whose name I can't remember, who's slightly...
Wolf, isn't it Wolf?
Is it Wolf?
Wolf
And Gregor. This episode had me wondering what happened to them. How did they escape? How did they make it through? Did they carry it?
Ahsoka novel. I'd have to reread the Ahsoka novel to see if they touch on those two characters. Ostensibly, Rex runs around and rescues any clones he can, but I don't think there's a lot that he can.
There'd be no time to get to anybody. So
No.
conceivably, these guys carried out their orders and then chose to live the rest of their life in, relative isolation. I mean, there's some regret and remorse there, I think, is implied later on in Rebels.
You really get to see too in Rebels the Kanan's dislike for Rex. And just when you remove the humanity from everything,
yeah,
you would mistrust a clone like a Mandalorian would mistrust a droid.
I mean, arguably,
right?
Caleb Dune is younger than Ahsoka.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. 100% during Order 66.
Yeah.
Even younger is Cal Kestis.
Good Lord, it just hit me now. Kanan Jarrus's real name is Caleb Dune. Were they setting him up to be related to Cara Dune?
Doom.
Doom. Doom. Okay,
Doom.
I take it all back. We can edit that out in post.
Oh, yeah, it's all good.
Don't cancel me. Wow, guys.
Yeah, man.
A lot to take in.
Anything else you want to hit on before we call it an afternoon?
No, it's funny even watching it 10 times or more, or however many times I've watched it, and even watching it like a year ago and having it, coalesce in my brain and insert itself into the rest of the canon. Watching the episode as it ends, I just feel empty, and I'm really inside those two characters.
Yeah.
And I could feel their pain and their emptiness, and it's like it's Star Wars, guys.
I was physically tired at the end of my writing my show notes last night or yesterday.
Yeah.
Not because it took me, the effort of writing the notes, but the emotional weight of what I was experiencing and how I was processing it. I was physically tired when I went home.
Hell yeah.
And I think we're going to get a little bit more of that next week as we wrap it up with our fourth and final
installment of Order 66.
Yeah. Well, guys, that's just about it for me this week. I would invite everybody to go back. If you're just coming to the series now, go back, have a listen to our back catalog. Of course, we have our 8-part Fandalore. Well, it's technically 9-part if you add in the season 1 retrospective. But we have retrospectives on season 1 of The Mandalorian. We have an 8-part review series of season 2. We really love doing that, which was the inspiration for this show. There's more Star Wars to come, though, next week.
Heck yeah.
As we dig in.
And it's not all Star Wars, guys. We do other things, too.
That's right. There's some Marvel stuff in the pipes coming, and
That's not the only thing in the pipes.
That's right.
That's right.
A little bit of...
Get your Bigfoot on.
Yes. So that's in other news. Andy, when's that going to be ready to go? The first episode of...
First episode, I'm hoping will be out this week.
Okay, so our new show, Off the Path of Normal, it's led by Andy and Kim, is our sort of paranormal, weird, alien... If it's,
aliens, cryptids, ghosts.
Yeah.
Anything weird,
it's one of those, yeah.
Dive in on it.
So that's starting soon. We've got lots of show ideas for Fandom Power. We actually may shift gears here. I know I've been talking sort of about the Back to the Future episode and the prop / sets episode, but we may have come upon some inspiration, and we may be going and taking a visit to the planet of Eternia sooner than we thought. Anyway, guys, I hope you stick around and check out all of our back catalog and our future catalog. If you like what we're doing, like and subscribe, share it with your friends. Don't forget you can reach out and talk to us in any number of our social media platforms or at our email address.
What do the kids say these days? Smash that like button.
Smash that like button.
Smash it.
All right, guys, that's it for me. Join us next week as we take a look at Season 7, Episode 12, Victory and Death. Until then, guys, my name is Wes. May the Force be with you, and do it.
Do it.
Do it.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Fandom Power. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll be talking about another one of your favorite fandoms. Fandom Power is a Sawcast production.